Hello internet! With the year almost ending, it's finally time to say who are the greatest characters and which are the best teams in the whole of Honkai genre so far. Now there is one more new character coming soon, but she's gonna come like mid-December. That's when Mariah Carey finally defrosts and sings a Christmas song. So for all I care, the year's already ended. Without further ado, let's jump into the tier list that Primit has listed, and we'll start with Member of Chaos, and we'll just go through all the modes as well later on. And hey, listen, Honkai genre can get rough sometimes, especially when a new character comes along and you're looking at zero polling resources in your account. As the good housewife on the lookout for great deals, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, Aniba. Aniba offers the best top-up services, and it's worth every bang for your buck. The best part is, Aniba complies with all of Hoyoverse's guidelines with top-up services, so it's certainly trustworthy, and as usual, I myself has used it. Zero issues with that. You can top up for yourself or for your friends because all you need to do is click the first link in the description, choose the item that you would like to top up, enter your server and then your UID, complete the payment, and voila, you see your resources in a designated account. No login needed. What's interesting is that there's a 10% cashback on what you're purchasing, or you can claim by going into your orders after purchasing, click on claim, and you'll see the cashback in your Aniba wallet. This cashback can be used for any other purchases in the Aniba website and can top up for Spiral even more. Or heck, pick up a gift or two. It's simple, it's a good deal, and most importantly, it's trustworthy. Check Aniba out and you'll support me as a creator too if you do give it a go. As usual though, no pressure at all. And with that said, let's get back into the video. Okay, let's just first take a look at the tiers that we have. We see Apex characters, meta characters, off-meta characters, and the Forgotten Ones. The number of characters in the Forgotten Ones list are quite worrisome. Like, there's a lot of them, especially the DPSs. God, there are a lot of terrible DPSs. I like how they position Yachi below everyone else. I feel like it's just based on alphabet, but you know what? He deserves to be last place. Bro's last place even in terms of the name arrangement. Come on. In any case, let's just show with the Apex characters. We have tier 0 and tier 0.5. To start us off with tier 0. These are basically the best teams that you can build right now and that you should pull for at the current meta. With the addition of Cyrene being one of the things that we should focus on, she actually got moved from tier 0.5 up to tier 0. You see, Cyrene is a character with quite a lot of issues, with one of the main issues being like she's not really versatile outside of Chrysos air teams, and one other issue is that you have to play her very specifically to make sure she has her ult ready during the first cycle, or else you'll be pretty much wasting a cycle just to get her ultimate, right? That issue does get solved with Eidolons, but not everyone has the Eidolon, so she was a pretty polarizing character for a while. But more techs being discovered, like just having her at higher speed or using her with dance. In a good setup, Cyrene can absolutely function as a tier 0 character, which is in tune with my own experiences while using her, and that's why I see Cyrene in tier 0 along with the best teams to pair with Cyrene, which is pretty much the whole of Chrysos Air. The list of the Chrysos Air that I see, we got Anaxa, Castris, Isolance, we got Evernight, and Final. Every single DPS that's tier 0 are Chrysos Airs. Like, holy crud, they're just dominating it way too well. Speaking of Chrysos Airs, we do see double Chrysos Air on the sustain list. They're just everywhere. Under the support DPS, we do see Evernight and also Kafka. Quite curious to see a Kafka somehow still holding her own in this day and age, but she certainly does, and it's also because of mainly the help of High Silence. Somehow, it's quite weird to me if you think about it. Kafka and Black Swan still works really well with a dot team with High Silence in there, and honestly, it's kind of weird to me that High Silence in the first place needed to work with Kafka and Black Swan, or even Kafka at least, but every single other Chrysos Air seem to work with like the likes of Tribi, with Cyrene. Not saying High Silence can't work with those characters, but it's mainly that you need her with Kafka specifically though. It's kind of interesting at least to me, but yep, to see Kafka at tier 0 being helped with High Silence is nice. Not only in TOA, but in Pure Fiction this week, we do see a buff to dots again, so Kafka stocks continue to rise. And in terms of Amplifier at tier 0, we do still see all the Chrysos Air. Pretty much all of them are except Trailblazer, which technically Cyrene includes her in the Chrysos Air list. And then there's also Sunday, the only other character that isn't part of the Chrysos Air, still holding his own, but he's still, just like Kafka, used mainly with Chrysos Airs. So I think we can see a pattern here. This year was the year of Chrysos Air. I think they're kind of not pulling any punches. In fact, they're not even trying to make it less obvious. Honkai genre seems a really thematic way of releasing characters where it's going to be the new group that is related to the new story and they're going to dominate. Point being, all of these characters are pretty much the recent characters that got released as well. Every single one of them are, and I do really much agree with all of these casts. They are all really strong, almost too strong that it took away a lot of the creativity you need in the game. You probably understand when you have Castris. When you do put a Castris in a side of like an endgame mode, you just think, yeah, I can handle this with the Castris, but the other side though, I gotta figure something else for that. Castris is just that strong that she can handle one side without a doubt. You don't have to even doubt it, man. But that is for tier 0. All of these are really strong characters. To take a sneak peek at all all the other modes as well, we do see a similar result. All of the top tier characters, most of them are Crystal's Air, with maybe one or two not being like, say, Jade. But guess what? She's mainly used with the Herda, which the Herda, she's actually not used to help Crystal's Air, but I suppose it's also because the Herda's too good in Perfection and she helps her instead. In terms of Apocalyptic Shadow, same could be said again, with the only few exception being Archer that is actually consistently good in Apocalyptic Shadow. And there's also Ranmei, but I guess this Apocalyptic Shadow was buffing break effect, so Ranmei was considerably better here. But most of them are indeed still Crystal's Air. You're not gonna escape them. Moving onwards to tier 0.5, and it's still similar, right? We do see most of the Crystal's Air, or at least they're related to them, and if not, they are definitely recent characters that got released in the same version. To show with the DPSs, we do see, well, Crystal's Air in Mighty, Crystal's Air in Aglaia. We have also the Herda, that's also the first character of the Virgin, I think. She's no longer dominating in tier 0, but she's still very much quite relevant in tier 0.5 and can very much still hold her own, especially in Pure Fiction. But give her a good team though, you can definitely still output really good results. In TOA, I still see tons of my friends use her, so kudos to people that got the Herda. And there's also Saber, which is also a recent character, and it seems the top tier characters are always a recent ones, right? Moving to the support DPS, we do see a Naxa, a Crystal's Air. Nothing much else needs to be said. And we have Black Swan that shares the same fate as Kafka, used in the dot team along with High Silence to make a really strong, the best dot team in fact, and they're still really top tier right now. Moving onwards, we do see the only one person that I think really held her own so far. It is Bronya. She is a standard banner character that somehow is still around, like she's still good. However though, it's mostly when she's paired with Fiden, which, well, it's a Crystal's Air. So is it that Bronya is really good, or is it Fiden made her really good, right? Overall, she's still a solid character, but without the Fiden team existing, I doubt she would be in this tier. But the fact that it does exist makes it fair that Bronya is around here. A lot of people still use Bronya with Fiden. It's a fair ranking. Moving on, we do see Cypher as a Crystal's Air, which nothing much to be said. She's still really strong as a Crystal's Air. Not exactly the top meta, like best character, but she's just useful everywhere though. We also have the usual Robin, Ranmei as well. They used to dominate tier 0, but now they're tier 0.5. I wouldn't even lie, I don't even think Ranmei without the Eidolon would be in this rank anymore. Maybe I would rank her a bit lower. However though, going down one tier, we do see like Tengen, so I would still say Ranmei's not the same tier as Tengen. Maybe still above, right? So I guess it's fair to have them be ranked here. And of course, we have the terrorist in Sparkle. Her only job is to help out Archer, and Archer's in the same tier as her, so I suppose that's why she's in this tier. In a good Archer team setup, you have to have the terrorist, which is why Sparkle is still quite high tier, considering just that team alone. Moving up next, we do see the older healer. Specifically, I would like to pay attention to the E6 Gallagher. This is the only 4-star that's considered the Apex character. Gallagher might actually be the GOAT to be able to hold his own as a 4-star along with all these gold incredible characters, right? The rest we do have Aventurine, Huohuo, and Lingsha. They're all older characters that can still make sure your team survives without a doubt, because there's a new tier above them with a Crystal's Air domination. I guess that's just how power creep works. Older characters will eventually be kicked down, and I will say, I feel it's fair to have Huohuo and Aventurine, and including Lingsha as well, to be moved down a bit. They have dominated top ranks for a long time, and even now they're still more than relevant. It's fair enough, and I really do love the fact that Gallagher is still very much useful. Props to the Ankh Gallagher, still holding his own. To take a look at Pure Fiction instead, it's something that's similar, where while Crystal's Air are still doing really well with Fiden and Naxa, we got Black Swan because of Kafka. While she's high up, then Black Swan would be high up. We do also see the normal Herda. Well, fact is, she's still good in Pure Fiction. It depends on elements and everything, of course, and without a doubt, you can still use her with the Herda, if anything, and they'll still kick ass in Pure Fiction just because the Herda is cracked out the gills. As for amplifiers and sustains, we do see very similar characters, with Dan Heng being actually not as high. I suppose he lacks the offensive capabilities and AoE capabilities like Hyacinth would have, which is fair, but in terms of survivability, they're also really strong anyway. Ranking them like this is not that bad in the end. I think it's just about the same. However, I would agree Hyacinth's team is the best team on a rank on its own, with it being Hyacinth and Castrus plus Evernight and a tribute, right? To look at Apocalyptic Shadow instead, it's pretty much just the same thing as well. A lot of Crystals there, a lot of the newer characters, with the only one character that's kind of an outlier would be Fei Xiao. In fact, this is the only spot where Fei Xiao is still good. It usually depends on the week as well. If the Apocalyptic Shadow's effect restores your ult, Fei Xiao's ult max charges gives her 2 ult, which is what makes her incredibly good in Apocalyptic Shadow at least. Unfortunately, in everywhere else, she does not hold the crown of the best DPS that she once held back in the day. Moving off from the top tier, we do see meta characters. These are characters that absolutely still work, but no longer dominates as much as before. And we do see some familiar faces, man. It is sad to see, but Akaran and Fei Xiao in tier 1. They were such strong characters before. They dominated for a while, always tier 0, but now we do see them drop down to tier 1. And it's not like they went bad. It's just that above them was birthed with a whole Chrysos Air team, right? They're just in a tier of their own, which makes the older characters that are still good a bit less relevant, but still tier 1, they can still 100% be used. I still see them used sometimes, a lot rarer, but they do exist. Same could be said for Jade, Xiaoqiu, and even Luocha. Cyril did receive a buff, and she is actually very good in an archer team as well, in a very hyper-focused single target team, but not enough to put her above tier 1, I would say. However, though, the buff did make her a lot better, which I would say tier 1 is totally fair. And we do have a Tingyan. One of the better use case for Tingyan in this day and age is to use her as a free-to-play option for Finden, if anything. It charges up Finden quite well because Finden takes the energy regen and treat it as a charge for his ult, and it makes Tingyan quite a good free-to-play option for him if you don't have anything else, which is why she's still in tier 1. But outside of that, she's a lot less prominent than before, which is why tier 1 is absolutely still fair in my opinion. And that is pretty much it for tier 1. Still very strong characters that does their job, but they no longer dominate like before because above them simply got birthed with a Chrysos Air domination. Tier 1.5 sees us seeing a lot of the older main DPS and archetypes. We do see Blade, Jingliu, and Yunlei. Blade and Jingliu both got a buff, and they did get momentum at the start when the buff happened, but slowly but surely, there are more and more Chrysos Air that got released, and their archetype got more and more complete. They have lost their footing again. Will we ever see another buff for these two? God knows when. Not to mention, they do share very similar archetype as the meta archetype right now, which is HP change. It does kick them down a bit more, knowing that a lot of people would just stick to like the better HP change characters than using them. Kind of a weird decision if you ask me. Like, they just buffed the older characters to be the very much inferior version of the newer characters. I feel like they could have just made them unique maybe, and that would be nice, but well, let's hope for another buff soon, huh? And then we do see Yunlei. She hasn't got a buff, but she's one of the older characters for the past version. She's essentially the better Clara, and she was really good for a while, but again, above them is just Chrysos Air that dominates everything up there. They're no longer at the same level. Moving next, we do see the likes of Argenti in the support DPS role. It's again mainly for the Herda, I would say, just for the erudition part of his kit. On his own, he's not really that strong. And we do also see Blade as a support DPS, lightly paired with Hyacinth to just get his charges charged up quicker. But for the lack of damage, he's still ranked middle of the road. And pretty much that's the case for all these characters, middle of the road. You don't have to use them, and when you do, they're not gonna like be the reason you win, but they're still there and they're still available, which makes them pretty middle of the road in the end. Not to say they're bad at all though. You still see these characters used sometimes, very rarely, albeit. You can just check out your friends' clearance and you'll see most of my friends are just sticking to Chrysos Airs, dude. And then we do see in a far right a Fu Xuan as a sustain, and wow, it's been a while since I've seen Fu Xuan. Well, after the whole year's gone by, she has lost her footing for sure. Her gimmick of damage sharing was really strong before, but now you just see characters that prevent you from taking damage like Dan Heng, or prevent you from dying at all and healing you so much that you wouldn't die like Hyacinth, yeah? Which makes something gimmicky like Fu Xuan's damage sharing, that instead of your ally dies, Fu Xuan will be the one under pressure. It turned from something unique to just something not as good. And I would love to see a buff for Fu Xuan. I think she definitely is due for one, but I will still say there are more characters that need a buff way more than Fu Xuan would, so in the end, she's still usable. Tier 0.5 seems fair to me. Moving up next, we do have tier 2. I would say these are the characters that are really close to just being completely replaced. Specifically, just the break effect archetype. Look at that. We do see Feet, we do see Firefly, and we do see Rappa. All of them, and Bruto as well. All of them are break effect characters. Unfortunately, break effect has not seen the best of days ever since the last version, if anything. Now it's all about HP change, but there are rumors that Black Dahlia could have something to do with break effect, but well, rumors just rumors. And who knows if they can even put them up in like tier 0 again. But for now though, break effect is certainly not in the best of spots, with more bosses having harder toughness to break, and given the fact that you simply have a long time to charge up your damage window essentially, because you have to break the boss, with the current meta more being just, if I can change my HP, I'll just do damage to you anyway, I don't care. So we do see most of the break effect characters in tier 2, along with some older characters, even older characters, including stuff like Jingyuan. It's fair enough, there's just a lot more better options than him. It's not to say he's just bad as a character, it's just that there's so much more insane characters that got released. It's like a tier got birthed above them rather than them got kicked below, right? And we do also see a Pella that no longer holds the throne of one of the best supports, but I would still say she deserves to be pushed up a tier above still. She's still generally useful, but ever since Cyril got like an AoE effect on her ultimate, she kind of became like the second option for a Cyril, right? But well, it's a free-to-play character though, and that'll be all for tier 2. As for pure fiction, you do see some of the characters that are good sometimes, like, you know, Aglaia, but they're a single target, pure fiction being an AoE focus mode after all. So it's fair to see some of the strongest character in the previous mode here in pure fiction around the middle of the road, right? Aglaia is not exactly a strong character here at all, with Jingyuan being being better in this mode rather than Memory of Chaos. And finally, in terms of Apocalyptic Shadow, we do see very similar stuff as well, with the break characters being very low here, and most of the older characters definitely dropping into these 3 tiers. Don't get me wrong though, you can definitely still use them, but they're no longer as great as before, with a lot of limitations, because the characters that are just recently released are that much more potent. With that out of the way, it's time to check out the off-meta and the forgotten ones. These are the characters that honestly, I'll just say it, they're way too old and there are way too many issues right now with them to really shine in the current meta. And I would go through each of them, but well, there's way too many of them at this point. But I'm sure you've seen tons of these characters before. That's really familiar. I would say honestly, these are just like version 2 below. These are all the characters that's below version 2 pretty much. All of them was good at some point, at least except stuff like Yanching and Arm that just sucked from the beginning. It's just so sad they just didn't even have a spotlight. Prettyman has decided to put some of the 4 stars that was a bit higher in the tier, but I would say all these 3 tiers could be considered the same, where there's damn near no one that uses them anymore. At least in this mode, it's Memory of Chaos. I probably see 0% of Embodied Lune. Do know that it's only for E0 though, but even with E2, I don't think anyone's using IL Dan Heng anymore, at least in MOC. Definitely not seeing any Seal, definitely not seeing any Dr. Ratio, just the same way that I'm not seeing any Sample or Welt or any Asta anymore. I will say I definitely would prefer these ranks to be having really strong buff, or else there's gonna be an issue that we're gonna see with Honkai Star, where like starting from the next version, if anything, we might see way too many characters down the forgotten one or in the off-meta list that it would genuinely look pretty ugly. Like most of the characters being bad is not a good look for a game, right? I would love if the game had more creativity to them, where some of the older characters can still pull up sometimes and play with them. I have memories of all of these characters. They were so good at some point. I would love to be able to use them in this meta, man. And especially for the lower rankings, they're gonna be more of the same characters. And I'm just shocked that even Himiko in Pure Fiction is no longer the queen anymore. I suppose it really does heavily matter if like the element's correct for Himiko, because you have to break them. And they're just better options rather than, you know, needing you to break enemies. You just kill them because your HP changed, right? That's just what we are dealing with these days. But most of them are the same characters, with some being like, you know, even worse because we have Dr. Ratio that's really not that good for AoE. And as for the final mode, Apocalyptic Shadow, we do see mostly the same characters, with some of the tier 1.5 ones like Jing Liu being down here. Not exactly a perfect week for her, and not exactly a perfect like boss for her as well. It does put her down more than usual. During her week, she's definitely higher up though, but still not high enough to really pay too much attention to. And yep, those are the forgotten and really much no longer relevant characters that's really hard to use and utilize well. Not saying you cannot, you still could. It's just extremely tough to use them, especially without Eidolons involved for the 5 stars. There are most certainly niche ways to use these characters that could still work really well. Like maybe there's a team with Hanya that can use with Archer that still pulls out a really good clear for Apocalyptic Shadow, yes, but in a grand scheme of things, 1 week you can use it, 1 week you can't. It makes these characters really inconsistent, right? And that is pretty much all for the tier list of 2025, with probably only 1 more character left to go. I thought I'd make this video right now. Yeah, pretty much the best teams and characters, as you can probably obviously tell, it'll mostly be involved with Chrysos heirs. We're talking about the best team being Castrus and Fiden right now, and that should be the case for the whole year. Starting from the next year though, we don't know what's gonna happen with the new version. More than likely it's gonna be the better teams, the better characters, and all of these characters we see now dominating might move their way down. That's just how it goes. My personal wish is to see more buffs for the older characters, like at least starting from like the Topaz Numbi batter. Would love to see some buffs with her to really fit in with the newer characters. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but it's a waste of design characters like these just to have them be like, you know, very low in the tier list that no one really uses. But well, that's just my personal take. Let me know what you think though of the whole year so far, and with all the best teams and releases. It'll be an interesting discussion, and I'd love to see yours. That'll be all. Take care.